G'day everyone and welcome to Seven Questions, a podcast that shares the stories and compelling lessons founders, investors and leaders shaping our economy. I'm your host, Gerard, founder and investor at Partner and co-founder of Create Financial. Through Seven Questions, we explore the founder journey, idea to legacy, uncovering the insights, lessons and defining moments that shaped each founder and the amazing business they built. Whether you're a first-time founder, serial entrepreneur, investor, or someone looking for insights on entrepreneurship and what it takes to build a world-class company, these conversations are designed to inspire you, get you thinking, and hopefully you'll find some timely wisdom that propels your journey. G'day everyone, and welcome to this episode of Seven Questions. It's super exciting to get to interview founders and hear about the journey that they've been on, the businesses they're building, and the ways that they're working inside the innovation ecosystem. Today, I'm joined by Uri Sternberg. He is the co-founder and CEO of MW Autonomous Systems. They're a drone company, but Uri is so much more than that. He hails from Israel. He's an MBA lecturer in innovation and entrepreneurship here at UQ, and he also lectures all around the world. And it's great to have someone with Uri's background and experience and skills share a different lens on entrepreneurship and building amazing companies here in Australia. Uri, super great to have you on Seven Questions. Welcome, mate.
Thanks, Ivan. Great to be here, and thanks you for having me.
Uri, let's start by helping people get to know you. What are some of the experiences and moments that have shaped your founder journey?
Yeah, first of all, I would say that you can probably tell from my accent that English is not my first language. Originally, as you mentioned, I'm from Israel, and I've been in Australia for only 3 years now. And, when I arrived here, I realized that while I knew English, give or take, that's not quite the same as speaking Australian. So today I feel like I understand the dialect a bit better, but I think that if you really try hard, you can still probably spot my accent, and not many people think I'm a breezy boy. That's not that's common. I've been in and around startups and innovation for more than 20 years now, mostly in tech, but also in more traditional industries. Along the way, I've been, very lucky to work with people much smarter than me in places like Israel, Europe, the US, and of course here in Australia, and to be invited into their journeys. So, as a partner, advisor, board member, or, someone that just stands there. In parallel, for about 15 years, I've also been an academic. I teach and do some research around innovation implementation, entrepreneurship, applied creative thinking. I'm teaching in several universities overseas and here at UQ, mainly in the master level. And, it gives me an opportunity to spend a lot of time with students and early stage founders. So, trying to connect between the theory and what actually happens in the real world. So I think that mix of building companies and living in the academic world has given me a unique combination of curiosity and a bit of humility, because I feel that I'm very comfortable saying I don't know and then going to find someone who actually can or know the answer. If I had to describe myself as a founder, I'm saying that probably I'm a bit, I love the process. I like the messy beginning, the uncertainty, the whiteboard, the late night calls, the part where nothing works yet. Once things are stable and predictable, I tend to get a bit bored. So Today, MW is my main focus, and we are still in the messy part. But hopefully we're going to a good place in the near future. Yeah.
Uri, a lot of founders get into starting their first business and they really don't know what they don't know. And they've not really had that commercial experience where they understand how hard it's going to be. Yet you've got that background, right? And you've seen it from a lot of different angles, and yet you've still co-founded MW Autonomous Systems. So that tells me something about your tenacity and your willingness to have a crack, even though how hard it is. So that's pretty cool. Seven Questions is really a podcast that helps the listener to learn about entrepreneurship, to learn about amazing companies that are being founded here in Australia and elsewhere, and to gain some insights from the people doing that, whether that's the founders or the investors. And it's a great opportunity for the people on the podcast, the guests that I host, to share their story and to build their profile and brand in the wider Australian context. So let's start with the first question, which is, what inspired you and your co-founders to start MW Autonomous Systems, and what problem are you actually solving?
Well, MW Autonomous System is an Australian deep tech company. And what we did is design, build, trialed, and now we are selling fully autonomous drone-based systems. And each system wants to solve a specific real-world problem. Obviously, every system can solve only one problem at a time, but we're working in different sectors, from agriculture to security, to maintenance or inspection or even cleaning. And the inspiration came from a simple observation. There are countless tasks that are dangerous, physically hard, expensive, or incredibly time-consuming. And most solutions available today still require a human in the loop. A person on the ground, a pilot maintaining line of sight with the drone when we're using drone, a team driving for hours just to check a fence or a pipe. And we asked, what if we could remove the dependency completely? Our typical customer is not the giant corporation with an in-house R&D team. They don't really need us. It's the operator with muddy boots, the big farm, the building company, the team responsible for maintaining hundreds of kilometers of fence, the company that tired of sending people to, hang up from building just to wash them. And they know their business extremely well. They don't necessarily want to learn about the technology or to operate it themselves. And what they actually want is just, a box sitting in the corner that quietly does the job for them every day, all day, without drama. Maybe the best way to explain what we actually do is with a story from a cattle farm we are working with. And the owner came to us and said, I want, a drone that can scan my whole property and locate my cattle, mainly to make sure they're okay and to spot if any animal is in distress, say a cow that slipped in mud and broke her leg. Sorry. So, my first reaction is just to ask him, why do we need drone for this? Just because we sell drones, it doesn't mean the drone is always the right fit. And I'm trying to be honest with this and to better understand the situation. So I asked him, why not to just put like a tag or something on any animal? There are actually systems that do exactly that. So he explained to me, and it's thing that you always relearn that technology can help you only with doing things, but the knowledge, the experience that people with the boots on the ground actually have is something else. So, he explained to me that sometime we need to make sure there are no additional animals. Obviously, I don't know anything about farming. So I asked him if he meant like a cows that, just born in the field. So I remember that he gave me that look that a Queenslander farmer would give a boy from Tel Aviv. And he explained to me that during that certain time of the year, during the season, bulls from the neighboring farm just jump the fence. Apparently they can do it. I didn't know that they can do it, and cause a lot of trouble for the herd. And it impact growth and productivity and, this social stress that it caused. So it's not a GPS tag problem. It's a scan my whole farm kind of problem. And again, only the person on the ground would know it. So we ran a proper workshop to understand his world deeply. We realized the core need wasn't just to find the cow with the broken leg, but identify the hazard early enough so she doesn't break her leg in the first place. By the way, my motivation to solve that grew significantly. once I understand, I ask him if the vet bill is a big issue for him. So he looked at me and explained to me that that's not exactly what they're doing with a cow with a broken leg. So let's just say I learned something that day that I wish I hadn't. But as we designed the system, we discovered we can collect a lot more useful information, for free during each mission. Checking fences are intact, gates are closed, detecting weeds growth, spotting blocked trucks. And then we asked him, what's the hardest, most labor-intense task that your people do? And he said that it's actually checking if the cattle is ready for the next phase, basically go to the slaughterhouse. So many times what they need to do is they need to gather the animal, to bring them, to weigh them, to measure them, only to discover that they are not ready yet. Wasted effort for the whole team. So we updated the software so that during routine flight, the drone takes like images from specific angles and runs AI-based analysis, estimating weight, fat percentage, and other parameters the farmers need, all at the individual animal level. So suddenly the drone isn't just a guard or a safety tool. It's removing some of the hardest physical work from the team. And in a world where recruiting and retaining farm staff is very difficult, that makes a real operational difference.
Uri, I'm just thinking about the scope of the problem that you're solving and how you could pretty much take the approach that you use at MW Autonomous Systems and apply that across a whole bunch of different use cases. So we're going to dig into those in a moment, but let's slip to question number 2, which is, the approach you're taking is really quite collaborative. And so as a result of that, I'm expecting that you've learned some really unique insights. You've built some, I guess, know-how. You've got a secret sauce, a way of approaching the way you go to market that is, fundamentally different from your competitors and gives you a competitive advantage. Do you want to share a little bit about how you think you can win in the market with the approach you take?
So, the short answer is that we just give people tailored mission-specific system with the simplicity and price and delivery time of an off-the-shelf product. So basically, when people hear bespoke, they think expensive, slow, painful, full of ongoing bugs. We flip that equation and we make sure that they will get something that is highly compatible. And we have 3 principles that guide us. First, every system must be extremely simple to operate and maintain.
Great.
In most cases, the only must is that we need some place to put the drone, box with the drone inside. Everything else can be fully automated, and the customer does not need to become a drone expert. That's very important because people sometimes afraid of technology because they don't want additional problems. They want something to solve their problems. The second is the system must deliver value beyond the narrow task it was originally asked to do. Mm-hmm. It shouldn't just complete a mission. It should help with broader day-to-day operation, removing dangerous tasks, saving labor effort, providing better data. If it only ticks a single checkbox on a spec sheet, so, it's just not good enough. And third, and that's very important, we do not sell R&D project. It's not what we're doing. We don't want the customer to pay for our experiments. The offer on the table is very simple. A solution tailored to your reality, to your specific needs, with the price and timeline of a standard product. That's where we bring real value. So to show how this works in practice, let me continue with the cattle farmer I mentioned before, but not exactly, because the thing is that one day he called me and said his friend had visited, seen the autonomous drone, in action, and was blown away, obviously. But the friend grows avocado, not cattle. And he asked me, do you have something for avocado trees? Now, that's a problem. Because the honest answer could easily sound very bad. No, we don't have, any off-the-shelf product for that. And in many cases, the only word the customers hear is, no. Yeah. We don't have it. In this case, actually, we happen to have done work with avocado farms in a previous venture. So I could give him an answer that sounds a bit better. And, even though the system for the avocados compared to the cattle is very different, different drone size, different sensors, about 80% of the software has changed, different batteries, different charging setup, everything is different. But still, we deliver his system in less than 3 months because from our point of view, it's basically just take the part of technologies and, just assemble them a bit differently. It's not really starting a new, inventing something.
Yep.
So what that we did, we used only proven technology, and this is what we always do. We're using only thing that we both know that it's proven, and we personally have had experience with. And we built it all together to form one full and good system. And this is our real secret sauce: the know-how and the experience in selecting the right part, the right technologies, the right elements, and making sure everything will work well together. And you talked about competitors. So, there are many companies that are doing great work, but many times the problem is that they will not necessarily give you end-to-end solution. And then you will have problem with the little gaps that remain. We give end-to-end solution from the box to the drone to the software to whatever you need. You just press a button and that's all. And by the way, now the avocado farmer's drone flies over the trees once a day and flags individual trees that need attention, like, too much water, not enough water, kind of a, specific fungus, much like cattle. I don't know anything about avocado farming as well. But, basically the system detects everything the farmer told us he looks for during his daily inspection round. And again, once you start looking, additional needs emerge. And it's never just about, the original requirement.
So how big's your team and how do you approach these different use cases and get that, capture the subject matter knowledge and really have the depth of understanding to be able to then map the, best case platforms and software and things you need to bring together, sensors to capture the information that the customer needs and also achieve that beyond the simple task, what other value can you add?
So our team is not that big. Obviously, we're a startup and we're considering ourselves as a startup. We're trying to hold this to be a startup and not to become a company yet. So we have about 8 people that are part of our regular team. And what that we have, again, because all of us come with a lot of experience, and most of them come with also defense level experience. So like cutting edge technology is something that they all know very well, and they know other people. And mainly from the few highly ecosystem that you can find for technology all over the world. So it's like, a text away from, can you help me with this? Just the other day, we're looking for a sensor, a specific sensor that can do something quite amazing. So, I thought that it doesn't exist. And one of my engineers told me, wait, I'm going to check with my friend. And then we realized that, the other side of the world, maybe, but there is a sensor like this. So this is part of our DNA. And, I can give you another example of a project that we've done with our autonomous washing system. Okay.
Yeah.
So we have a strategic partner there. And, he had a clear motivation to reduce workplace accident, injuries, liability, risk, because traditional window cleaning using people, in lifts or on ropes, it's extremely dangerous. For my opinion, it simply shouldn't exist anymore. But simply putting a drone on the job doesn't solve the problem because you still need a human pilot maintaining direct line of sight, and several stories up dealing with sun and reflections and trees and constantly changing wind patterns around the building, you're basically just swapping one kind of risk for another. So that's not what we are looking for. This is why the fully autonomous part is so important. So our approach is to take the human completely out of the loop. The flight is fully autonomous, which removes the main hazard and also removes the need to put, the operator there in dangerous or just uncomfortable situation. The software can recognize different surfaces in real time, if it's glass or stone or wood or many other different materials, and adjust accordingly. And just like a person wouldn't spray, fully open window, the system won't either. Even if you, and we tried it, even if you will, decide to open and close window while it's working, we can make sure that it will not happen. Nothing will be there. But the main thing is that you end up with a system that cleans better and cleans faster and, easier to operate, but also it's very easy to adapt with the system to different mission. If someone wants to clean walls instead of windows, not a problem. Solar panel, easy. Paint, instead of spray water, let's spray paint. Sure. Or, something that we did just to describe, but it was very interesting. Clean the outside of a ship while it's at sea, moving at night.
Wow.
Because, for me, as a human being, it's complicated. I can't see it, but for sensors, it's the same. And customization, it's what we do best. We are actually, talking about 3 months usually from request to deployment, not a multi-year R&D program.
Wow. I've got 100 questions, Uri. So such an interesting business and such a capability to be able to pretty much map any use case and then create a solution that delivers, value around the particular task, but also that that additional value that you've mentioned a couple of times. So once you've got a use case, whether it's cleaning or, avocados or cattle management or whichever, do you then package that up and resell that as a standard kind of offering out to that market?
So that's actually a good question that we are kind of debating between among ourselves about it, because the short answer is yes, of course. I mean, if another farmer from the same kind of activity wants the same system, sure, the IP is ours, obviously, and there's not a problem. We're not using the private data that we collected for the farm, but the system can definitely be just duplicated. But the thing is that, and we had a few experience with this, even two, for example, farms that do kind of the same thing, it's not quite the same. The surface is different, the challenges are different, the weather is sometimes, there's a lot of variables. So it will still be something that there will be some adjustment. And at the end of the day, every customer get a bespoke solution. The only system that currently I can tell you that we just duplicate and it's the same, again and again, it was the washing that I just mentioned, because basically we built like a box that you can put on the back of a ute. And then you have a cleaning business, at a second, all you need to do is just press the button. It will clean whatever you need, if it's gutter or roof or walls or whatever. And then you can just move to the next customer. So that's like a business in a box. So that's a product. But most things are, the bespoke solution is part of our DNA. This is what we can do best, the creativity and innovation and understanding all technologies and not just the specific one that we have in the product.
How are you getting, are people coming to you with inquiries? Are you going out there and doing business development? What's the sales motion like?
So actually both. Currently, because we are pretty early stage, we just start selling, finished trial and everything recently. So obviously not many customers know about us. So we approach customers, people that use drones, and we ask them if they want to use drone in a better way. People that don't use drone, and we think the drones can help them. And in some cases, we actually start about drones, and then we understand the drones is not the right solution. But then they say, wait, can you just give us all the end-to-end solution with the robotics and the software? But instead of drone, like, let's buy, I don't know, like the dog, the Boston Dynamic dog, or like some other vehicle. And we had actually a few experiences like this, which was amazing, because I'm always saying that we are not a drone company at the end of the day. Our main focus is about full autonomous. So we are an autonomous company, but you can't really hold it. So, you need something that you can look at.
So are you guys going to start deploying humanoid robots to do the same thing?
Well, first of all, not today. And second of all, we are not going to build them, at least
No,
not in
of
the
course
near
not.
future.
No.
But the drones we do build from scratch. So that's a whole different. So this is why we are putting our effort on the drone, because we have a lot of flexibility there. If you need smaller or bigger, or, the right size, because we built them. So, it's something that we can just build the exact right size for you. So you will not pay for a bit bigger. You will not get a bit smaller, because this is what we have. And if we are taking something off the shelf from other companies, obviously we need to take what we can get.
So when you say build a drone from scratch, do you mean you're assembling components? You're going and finding the components, or are you literally, manufacturing, the frames, the everything?
So some of the part, obviously, we don't need to restart everything. We are not only with scraps and bolts. It's a bit more than that. But the designs are ours, our IP, and even the frames we are custom made for the mission. So it's not like we are taking some other, DJI or whatever drones and just saying, oh yeah, we can build the same thing on ourselves and just put on a different sticker. No, it looks different, it operates different. And even between our drone, if you need the drone to swap battery or just to charge, so it will look a bit different. And it's not one size fits all.
Yeah, that's fantastic. What an incredible capability. And how much of that capability is here in Australia?
Well, we do everything here in Australia, and we operate not necessarily here in Australia, but because at the end of the day, we are bringing a lot of technologies that are not necessarily something that not started here, but not necessarily you can even find here. So we actually have a lot of relationships with other places, obviously in Israel, in the US, in Europe, and we can bring new technology. We had a project that basically we trialed a drone that need to look at a 50-kilometer fence and to make sure that it's intact and if there's any problem. So we had to use different kind of drone, a fixed wing, because the regular drone, the hexacopter, it can't really do it. And our CTO loved it because he was thrilled to revisit technology he had worked with before. And again, the system doesn't just check if the fence is broken. It prioritizes maintenance. And so when a crew goes out there, they know exactly what job they are going to do, because it can detect what kind of problem there is and, and exactly where it's going to be. So they don't need to, search for kilometers to find where is the broken part.
That's cool.
So our system builds the maintenance work plan. What to fix, when, in what order, what is more important than other, scheduled for maximum efficiency. So the uncertainty of driving and hoping to that I will find it, waste labor, time, and it's just much better when we do everything fully automatically and autonomously. So it's not just about the flying there. It's about understanding the need and to give a full solution.
It's pretty impressive, because what you've just demonstrated to me is that you go beyond the use case of identify the problem. You're going right out to the let's now schedule the remedial action, the maintenance, the work that goes into fixing things. And you're doing that also in a really smart way as well. So that the true end-to-end solution that's a pretty big claim. And you can see how you guys are literally delivering it. Really cool. Hey, I'm sure you have learnt stacks and stacks of lessons on your journey, Uri. And question number 3 on 7 questions is, what's one thing that you know now, a lesson you've learned over the last couple of years that you wish you'd known at the start? And how would that have helped you or changed the journey?
So honestly, I think that the one thing I wish I truly internalized, at the start, because I knew it. All
You
of us
knew it.
know
Yeah.
it, intellectually. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Owning
there's
it.
something beyond this, is that the job as a founder, as a manager, is not to have all the answers, but to ask better questions. So I'm always saying that the job of the founder is just to make sure that everyone have what they need in order to do their work well, because I don't need to do anything, just to make sure that they're doing their work. But about the question part, if we will return to this, when I started, I could come to a customer with a solution in mind, even if I don't necessarily come and say, yeah, I know your work, but I had in mind something, and that I thought that I understood the problem. And, I done the research, I had the technology, and almost every time the customer knew something I just didn't know. And sometimes that completely changed the picture. The cattle farm story is the perfect example. I came with a drone and a plan. Within 20 minutes of really listening, I realized I had the wrong solution to the wrong problem. The cow with the broken leg wasn't the real issue. The bull jumping the fence was. And the vet bill, well, it wasn't a thing. So something else entirely was on their mind. Nowadays, what I'm trying to do is to start every new customer engagement with a proper discovery workshop, not a pitch, not a demo, but a session where we generally try to understand their work, what they do, how they do it, where the friction is, what they are not feeling and comfortable with, what they are not telling us because they assume we won't understand or just got nothing to do with this anyway. And I try to stay comfortable with asking the most basic question. And it's a bit challenging because, I want to sound smart, but once we ask those questions, even though people may look at me and say to themselves, oh yeah, he doesn't know anything. But that reveals a lot of things that, that we want to understand. And the important thing, the things that everyone else in the room already stopped questioning a year ago. And then we can bring this added value because we understand a bit better the situation.
I love it. I have a saying that is design and build with, not for. So design and build with your customers, not for your customers, because I think, yeah, you captured it so well in that story. The idea of assuming that you know what's right or assuming that you have the level of nuance and detail to get to the real value add versus actually having the knowledge and experience, the lived experience of the customer. And if you can extract that true, genuine nuance, then you can really design a solution with the customer that solves not just their immediate need, but solves all those additional opportunities and benefits that really locks you into the customer and makes your product incredibly valuable and also very sticky. Really cool, Uri. I think that approach to truly asking great questions is something that every founder does know intellectually.
Yeah.
But practicing it. Yeah. And you get busy, right? And yeah, all those things. Hey, you've been on this journey for quite a long time, right? And even though that MW Autonomous Systems is not an overly old company, what's been a pivotal moment or something that's happened that's changed the trajectory of the organization?
So it's actually a very good question because, I can think about a few moments like this along my career, along the years, but with MW, it definitely was the fact that MW actually started with a giant failure. Okay. And the most important thing is that we grew out of. So before MW, the venture was called Marine Wellness. Okay. And see where MW came from. The idea was to use, again, fully autonomous drone to distribute feed in prawns or fish ponds. And the team did solid work. The system technology worked. The trials went well. but the business model didn't make sense.
Yep.
And the technical spec relying on, heavily modified third-party drones wasn't really scalable. Okay. And then at that point, I was brought in as a business development lead at the time to help fix it. And when it became clear to me that, it ain't going to work this way, and we needed to shut it down, the project, and, rethink from scratch, then we make the decision to keep the initial MW as a permanent reminder of that glorious failure. But that's important, it's not.
It is
a reminder, not just to hit ourselves because of all the money that we spent, but here's why it was pivotal. During marine wellness, the team had literally dismantled DJI drones, re-engineered them, integrated our own software to make them fully autonomous, and then rebuild them again. And it actually worked. I mean, it flied. It was amazing. And I say the team very deliberately here because, my contribution to that process was mostly standing nearby and looking impressed, which I was. But at some point, we looked at each other and said, we don't need DJI. We can build our own hardware. We can design the whole system end to end. That realization is the foundation of everything MW does today.
Right.
The confidence to build custom, the capability to adapt fast, the understanding of what full autonomy actually requires in the real world, all of that came directly from what we learned by failing with marine wellness. That's why I kept the name. Not as a footnote, but really as a foundation.
I love that, right? I love the understanding and awareness that the team has because of the journey you've been on. I'm thinking about, the current geopolitical environment and the opportunity you had to learn to be able to build a drone from scratch and not be reliant on third-party technology or third-party software. That surely must give you a competitive advantage in a world where data and data security is, a really important issue, right? And data sovereignty is a really important issue. Is that part of your selling proposition?
So for some of our customers, it's really important. By the way, not only here in Australia, in the US as well, they ask, where is the sensors coming from? Where is the cameras coming from? Where is the chip? And is there any chance of a backdoor? Once we built it here in Australia and all the data is here in Australia, it's usually, an advantage that we can have. And again, for some customers, it's important, obviously for others, not necessarily, but it's certainly part of it. It wasn't our plan, but it was a good side effect.
Yeah, that makes complete and utter sense. And it must open up new markets to you as well. Let's jump on to question number 5, which is, what's one of the hardest decisions or challenges that you've had to face or make as a founder? What did you learn from that, and how do you operate differently these days?
There are many kinds of hard decisions I faced, repeatedly over the years, and they're very different in nature from each other. I think that the major one is knowing when to step away and how to do it. Not necessarily with MW. MW, everything is okay, but I had some other experience, obviously. And, when you decide to shut down or just to walk away from a venture while your co-founders still want to keep going, the logic can be clear, but emotionally, it's very heavy. These people were your closest circle for a period of time, your second family. And, you've been through the hard moment together. And then you're the one that just saying, I don't think this can work, or I need to step down because sometimes, it's about me. And I try to handle those situations, as transparently and, as fairly as possible. But there's no version where it feels comfortable. And always, staying in a place when you no longer believe in the business or in your place in it, it's not fair either, not to yourself, not to your partner, not to the people, their livelihood depends on this specific venture. So I think this is the hardest part. thankfully now with MW, we're not really there. Everything is great right now. But I think that part of being in startups, and startup sometimes, will not succeed majority of the time. In Israel, the percentage is 96% failure. Because so Australia, I saw somewhere 80% failure. I wouldn't be proud about this number, because I think that it just means that you are avoid trying if you're not 100% sure. And the trying is the process. This is where we learn. This is where we grow. And if I fail in 5 startups and then the 6th one was great, it's related to the failure. As I mentioned with marine wellness, with MW, it's related to each other. So, but to know where to quit and how to quit, that's a challenge. This is really hard.
I think when you're in an industry like the innovation industry and you are trying to solve really challenging problems with contemporary science, contemporary technology, or things that haven't been built yet, right? Like literally you're designing, building things for the first time. Yeah, the failure rate is high, and being comfortable with giving it 100% and knowing when to step back is a really key lesson. And it's often a lesson that people avoid. And sometimes ecosystems don't support founders making mistakes, right? Or, they don't support a failed company because that's just not part of the culture. You look at Israel, for example, and Israel's track record with innovation is absolutely world leading, because I think the culture supports people having a go, having a crack at solving really, really challenging problems, and an appreciation of the learning and the value of that learning along the journey. And I think it's something that the Australian ecosystem is developing a muscle in. However, we've still got a bit of a journey to go. So definitely a really valuable, set of experiences to learn how to step back from something, when to step back from something, and how to do it graciously as well is really important, because there are other people's livelihoods on the line. So really cool lesson, man.
But one of DARPA's, most important principles is about not if you succeed or fail, no one cares about it. What have you learned from this experience? And this is exactly what I think that we should do. Easier to say than done, obviously, but this is the culture that I would like to see more here in Australia. Try, fail. The question is if you learn something from this and grow as a person, as a company, as an ecosystem.
I love it. Hey, question number 6 is about how do you as a founder sustain your energy, your mindset, your relationships? How do you keep all that stuff going while you're working on something as important and consuming as a company like MW?
I'd love to just say balance, but we all know that saying it and doing it are 2 very different things, completely different. Yeah, and I'm not too sure that I really know how to do balance well, because when I'm in something, so I'm fully in, often around the clock, I literally wake up at night, down some, a few lines or an idea, and then in the morning try to recall what in here. And, I enjoyed being deeply immersed. Now, this is actually something I think about a lot, not just for myself. For many years now, I've been running a consulting practice around innovation and, applied creative thinking. And one of the pieces of advice I'm probably most known for is to block some time in your calendar for a meeting with yourself.
Yep.
Specifically for the non-urgent work that is actually the most important. The thinking, the planning, the deep work that never screams for attention. So it's always the first thing that, just gets pushed off. And I hold myself to exactly the same standard. I close a slot in my calendar, mute my phone, and work on something that isn't urgent at all. Because if I don't protect it proactively, I simply won't get to it. And I believe I shouldn't advise managers to do something I'm not willing to do myself. And then on the other end, when I'm on holiday, even just like a short weekend away with my family, I disconnect completely. 0% work. And you know what? The world doesn't collapse. The contrast between the full in and disconnect completely, this is what keeps me going. Intense and deep when I'm in it, generally off when I'm not. That, protect the energy, my relationships with other people, and my excitement for what we're building.
It is such a common trait for a founder. Like, I think it's just part of the wiring of an entrepreneur or a founder. They absolutely immerse themselves in the problem they're solving, the way they're solving it. And there's always a million things to do. So you can be 100% occupied. And, like most founders, we get a sense of, self-worth. We get a sense of satisfaction. We get a sense of identity from doing that, from being in the struggle, from working hard. And I think having those moments where you're very practical, like you said, scheduling time in your diary to do the less important things, the less sexy things, the thinking things, the deep things, and also scheduling time for your family or exercise or sleep. All those things are equally important, right? In fact, that's the fuel, the foundation that enables an entrepreneur to be creative and to really solve meaningful problems and build great relationships. So great insight. Thanks for sharing, Uri. That's really cool. Man, I think you're on an incredible journey. Like, I look at what MW is doing and the kinds of problems you're solving and the breadth of opportunities that I think are going to come at you because of the approach you take. So I can only imagine that the business is going to get busier and the team is going to expand and you're going to be faced with a lot of opportunities over the next couple of years. Let's talk about the next 6 to 12 months. What's coming up for you? What's next on the journey? And how do people reach out to you? How do they get involved? If someone's listening to this and they're going, hey, I've got a problem, I would love your help. How do they reach out?
So, right now, as you described well, one word, scale. Okay. My main focus is scaling MW. We are in a strong position. Core development is done. We have early customers whose systems are already operating in the field. And we have a multidisciplinary team with serious real world experience, including people who, work on defense level, cutting edge technologies. The team is excellent and really hungry to win. So, we're in a good place. What we are looking for now is organizations that understand where the world is heading. Yep. Even if they don't understand the technology themselves, I don't understand it either. It's okay. But they know their own businesses extremely well. They don't want to become drone experts or, technology experts. They want a plug-and-play autonomous system that quietly becomes a tool for them, not another complexity to manage. The ideal partner for us are customers and strategic partners who can't afford to be left behind.
Yep.
Large farms, operator of big physical assets, companies with hard or dangerous maintenance and inspection tasks, organizations responsible for, long infrastructure or big infrastructure, sites where labor is complicated and safety is critical. We are not looking for investors right now. We are looking for people who want to deploy these systems and build the next generation of operational together. Beyond MW specifically, I'm always open to conversations about, consulting on innovation and creative thinking, joining interesting ventures as an advisor or board member, or getting involved in something early stage that tackling an interesting problem. I like having a few things, going at once. This is just who am I? If you're listening to this and thinking, oh, that sounds like, a challenge we have or something that I want to talk about. So the best way to reach out is LinkedIn. Reach out, tell me what problem you're wrestling with, and we'll see if autonomous is the best way to deal with this.
Awesome, Uri. I'm going to put your LinkedIn profile and your website and all your contact details in the show notes so people will be able to reach out to you, and I encourage people to do that. I can think of a stack of industries, the critical infrastructure industries, the agricultural industries, the linear assets and transport industries where there's lots of applicability for the kinds of, I expect them to have the problems that you would easily be able to solve. So, for those people listening in those industries, highly recommend chatting with Uri and the team. Mate, it's been fantastic getting to learn more about you as a founder and the way you approach things, and importantly about MW Autonomous Systems and where it's at and some of the cool challenges and industries that it's working in. I always like to finish 7 questions with 7 rapid fire questions. So you ready for this?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. Right, let's start with this one here. Coffee or tea?
Tea. Any
Tea?
place, anytime. Yeah, coffee is completely different story. 1 cup a day, strict rule. And the thing is that it has to be a very specific brand from back home that you simply cannot buy in Australia. So anyone came back from, a vacation, gets a small smuggling assignment before he came back. But, you can declare it. Okay, but
I love it. Morning or night?
Night. Definitely my best ideas come when everyone else is asleep. Great for thinking, not great for people getting, a message from me at 2 a.m.
Beaches or mountains?
Beach, but without the sand. Someone can arrange an Australian beach with my coffee and no sand. I'm fully in. That's what I'm looking for.
Maybe a rock pool somewhere, right? Are you books or podcasts?
I think that while speaking in the podcast, I really have only one right answer here. Yeah,
you're a podcast guy. Great. Do you prefer to work in the office or at home?
So probably a mix of the two. I like having, a place to meet with the team and talk and build things and break things and, and think about new things. But honestly, some of my best thinking happens, piece of quiet that I have away from the office.
And do you prefer gym or cardio?
Cardio, definitely. There's nothing like a good run to be completely alone with your thought and then come back and change half your plans based on what came up in those, 40 minutes.
I totally agree. And who's a founder or investor that you would love to hear from on 7 Questions?
Well, it would probably be an investor that specifically deal with deep tech, and particularly someone who had a rethink about things, in light of everything happening, like in the last month or two specifically. And there's a lot of big questions, and I think it would be very interesting to people like.
I think there's a couple of really cool investors that are super focused on deep tech in Australia. I can think of a couple. Steve Baxter is doing a lot of deep tech at Beaten Zone in the defense arena. And in fact, Steve and I are having a conversation with Savo, so that'll come out sometime as well.
Listen to it, that's for sure.
Yeah, he's great, right? And stacks of experience. Then we've got Main Sequence Ventures, one of Australia's largest VCs. They spun out as CSIRO, and they are a deep tech specific venture fund. They're really big now, a couple of $1 billion under management and an amazing team, like truly some of the best investors and best people I know work at Main Sequence. And then thirdly, you've got someone like Salus Ventures, who is, a defense and national security and dual use technology investor. Again, great team, good set of founders, really, really building an amazing momentum here in Australia. And so I'll try and get some of those deep tech investors on the podcast and hope that you enjoy the episode. Uri, thanks so much for joining us on 7 Questions. I've loved having a conversation with you. I love the approach you're taking at MW Autonomous Systems. I think the problems you're solving are just incredible, right? Like I can see the application in a whole bunch of industries, and I can see how you'd genuinely help solve important problems around staff and staff retention and doing dangerous work and the value add that you offer. So wish you guys all the best. Thanks for joining us on 7 Questions.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great conversation.
Awesome. Thanks for listening to this episode of 7 Questions. If you'd like to learn more about the founders, you can get a link to the full show notes in the description below. Have a great day. We look forward to you joining us on the next episode.